Hello and welcome to the next big thing. This is the second season of the Business Podcast. And today I'm delighted to welcome a very special guest who is incredibly experienced in technology, in entrepreneurship, in leadership, in life, and so many other aspects. So I can't wait to actually get into speaking with him and understanding about so many interesting aspects of his life, which will, I'm sure, inspire and educate all of us listening, including myself. So I can't wait to get into it. So please welcome Venki Prathivadi. Venki, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Shriram. That was a very generous introduction. Appreciate it. I wish half of that was true.
Oh, come on. Well, we're going to get into truth and untruth in a couple of minutes. But thank you for making time for coming on to the podcast. The podcast is called The Next Big Thing, and it's really a medium for me to. I mean, I love conversations. I love finding out about people. I'm curious, but also it is really a medium of inspiration, of education, of knowledge for people who are listening to do something greater with their life than just the usual routine. You know, they have aspirations and we want to unlock those aspirations, which is why guests like you play a big role in coming on the show and sharing their story, and people go, aha, I think I should do something, and this is how I do it. So thank you for making time. As you know, as I've talked to you offline, that the tradition on The Next Big Thing is that the guest comes and shares two things about themselves. One is fact, one is fiction. Now you spun this around in an interesting way, actually, and you said, "How about this?" So it's going to be something new, and yeah, let's see how this rolls out.
Okay. Well, I didn't tell you the snippet or the story.
No, of course not.
But I suggested that I'll tell you a real experience and have you figure out what's fact and what's fiction. So
yeah. Go for it.
So this is a while ago. I'm not that young and fit anymore. Going back a few years ago,
okay.
I ran a marathon in Melbourne.
Wow.
And I did the same timing as the great Ethiopian Olympic gold medalist.
Right.
Haile Gebrselassie.
Right.
I hope I pronounced that right.
Right. Okay.
He's a legend. He won the Olympic gold medal.
Yes. Okay. In which year? Which year?
I can't quite remember. I think it must have been 2006, 7, maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we finished our races, and we were stretching, and I didn't know who this gentleman super athlete was, and I was stretching, and he was stretching next.
What position did you finish in the marathon?
2 hours and 8 minutes.
No, what position?
Well, 2 hours and 8 minutes, and I don't know the position.
So you would have been one of the first, right? Surely.
Well, let's say so he looked at me, and he looked at me slightly strangely, and I said, "Hello, how are you doing?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you?" And I said, "Yeah, good." He said, "How did you go?" I said, "Yeah, I struggled a little bit, but I think I did okay." And he said, "What did you do?" I said, 2:08. He said, 2:08. Well, that's pretty good. And I said, "What did you do?" He said, "Yeah, 2:08. I said, "Well, that's really good." And then my son, who was very young, he said, "Dad, do you know who this guy is?" I said, "No idea." He said, "That's Haile Gebrselassie."
Wow, okay.
He's a world champion.
Right.
You have no idea you're talking to the world champion. I said, "No idea."
Right.
So we finished, stretching, and then he was going away.
Okay.
So that's the story. I'll let you decide what's the fact, what's the fact, and what's fiction here.
This is
You think I'm spinning a lie here, or
no? Wow, you could be. The whole thing could be.
The whole thing.
But no, that's fascinating. So look, I mean, actually, for me, it's pretty clear what is fact and what is fiction. because that's when there's only one way. And I think, unless I have not considered certain possibilities. So the fact is that you did it into 2 oh, no, actually there are possibilities.
2 hours and 8 minutes.
Yeah, the fact. So I'm going with. This is what I'm thinking. Okay, I lock the answer in very quickly. So I think the fact is that you did it into 2:08, and look, I'm trying to think whether how do you say
Gebre
Selassie, right? Okay. I'm trying to think if he was even there. So that's the part that I'm questioning. Now here's the problem. Okay, so all right. So I'm saying that you did 2:08, and
yes.
And Gebre Selassie wasn't actually there.
Well, I did 2:08, and Gebre Selassie was there. Both are facts.
So what's the fiction?
So what's the fiction?
Fiction is your son said, "Oh, this is." Do you know who that was?
No. That's not.
The fiction is that it was in Melbourne.
No. That was also a fact.
Then where's the fiction?
The fiction was he had run a full marathon. I had run a half marathon.
Oh my
God! I had no idea that he ran a full marathon of 42 point whatever kilometers, and I had run half of that in the same time that this legend had run.
I've done 30 plus 20. I've done about 51 episodes on this podcast. Okay, this was by far the best fact or fiction episode because that was classic. And so I don't know if you know this about me, and you know a few things about me, but I'm not sure if you know this one. Is that I am a storyteller. So I'm a novelist. I'm a published novelist. I don't know if you knew that. And
yes,
you knew that. Okay. And my very first book was called Wings of Silence. Yes. And that is about a deaf boy who runs in the 1980 Moscow Marathon.
Right.
Did you know that, or you didn't know that?
I didn't know that. I know you're a writer. Right. I've heard of the title of that book. I think I've read that in your bio. But right. I confess I haven't read the book.
Right. So it's about a marathoner. So marathon played a big role in my first book. I spent 3.5 years researching about marathons, and I spoke to Robert Di Castella, who's an Australian legend, about the marathon in Moscow in 1980. And so it's very interesting that you picked a marathon story. And the twist, I pride myself on the twists. Okay, I can see twists coming a long way, and I'm great at writing twists. But your twist, I did not see coming.
There you go. Even he didn't. Even the great Gebre Selassie didn't. He must have been looking at me strangely, thinking, "Who is this Indian guy? I've never seen him anywhere in any track."
I was trying to think, if you guys did the same time, surely you crossed the line at the same time. But I was like, oh, okay, maybe I don't know what happened there.
Because when you kept asking me for what position I finished, and I thought, well, I don't want to go here.
I don't want to go there. So was it the same finish line? Like, how does it work?
Yes.
So you just started the halfway mark?
Yes, that's correct.
So would you have? No, you wouldn't have.
No, it wasn't. So the finish line was.
You would have finished
before the same, but the route. Was different for marathon runners and
half marathon. That's a classic story. That's great. I think you should, everywhere you go, you should break the ice with this. And that's just hilarious. So marathoning, half marathon, that's very, very impressive. Very impressive. So
it just goes to show how poor I am in running. Or was. I can't run anymore.
Well, it's all relative, Venki, because sitting where I am, I'm thinking, man, I'm not sure I can do 25 kilometers or whatever the half marathon is in any time. I can do it in a day. So I'm looking at you in great awe and respect, going, wow, that takes a lot. And given the fact that I haven't run it, but I have academic knowledge of the marathon and the rigor and the discipline it takes. So how long would you have prepared for it?
Oh, quite a bit. There's lots of practice that went into it and building up the body. And there was that time where there was quite a few endurance events I did, and so I was in good shape, but struggled nevertheless. Anyway.
I think it's an extraordinary achievement to do half marathon, and to confound a world champion with your time is another achievement in itself.
So we had a very good laugh after that. Yes.
Good. And kudos to your son. He knew who you were talking to. That's good on him. So I found it very interesting that you talked about the marathon, because again, it relates back to a certain chapter of my life when I was obsessed with understanding how the sport worked. And in my book, in my story, the boy is born profoundly deaf, and he shares a very fractured relationship with his father, who prefers to nurture the younger one, the younger son. And actually, the younger son is the narrator of the book, and he has to choose. So the question was, how far are siblings willing to go for each other, for one another? How far is one sibling willing to go for another? And the younger boy the younger boy is a gifted tennis player, and he's considered to be America's next greatest thing in the 70s. So he's based on Johnny Mac's sort of, absolutely brilliantly gifted. And so everyone's invested in the younger boy, but everyone ignores the older boy, and the older deaf boy who becomes depressed, but gifted at running. But nobody sees it. Only the younger one does. And then the younger one has to choose between playing at Wimbledon or helping his elder brother compete in Moscow. So that's what the book is about. And I had to do so much research about marathoning, and my character does 2:11, I think, to qualify for the American trials, in the American trials. And then, of course, there's the classic twist. As you know, in 1980, America boycotted the Olympics. That comes later in the book when you don't expect it. At a high point, then there's the plummet. Anyway, sorry, you made me reminisce about the book.
I must find the book.
Yeah, no,
I must read the book now.
I'll get it to you. But good on you to do the marathon. But let me come back to some of what are the top 3 qualities that you developed during practicing for the marathon that then came handy for you in professional and personal life.
Yeah.
So what are some of the qualities?
Absolutely. The one thing that stands out is the resilience. And when you put your body through, these endurance events, and by the way, I also did a 100-kilometer event, which wasn't running, but it was kind of combination of walking and running. It was organized by Oxfam. They do it every year.
Right. I think I know this one.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think I know this one.
Right.
Yeah.
It goes from Jells Park here to beyond the Yarra Ranges, up in the mountains and through the trail. Yeah. So we did that as a corporate event with 3 teams of 4 people each. So all of these physical endurance events taught me one thing. It's not just the body. The mind gives up a lot earlier than the body does.
Wow.
Okay.
Check that out.
You look at these super athletes, it's the mind that differentiates them. And so resilience was a lesson I learned during those times that has stayed with me and helped me even now. I'm running a large program, quite challenging. And many people would feel like giving up, given the difficulties. And so it's taught me to be, to take things on, be resilient. That's one thing. And obviously the all of the practice, the sacrifices you need to make, and the value of your support system, your support crew. You can't do these things by yourself.
Sure.
Yeah. As the African proverb goes, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with people or friends.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I didn't know that one.
Right. Okay. So if you do a marathon, that's a very long run, and you need a lot of people to support you.
Yes.
If you do a 100-kilometer event, you need the whole whole villages.
Yes,
So that is something I learned, which holds me in good stead in my professional life.
Sure.
That you can't do things by yourself.
It's a great problem. I love it.
Yeah, and also the other thing it taught me was these things are hard on your body and your mind, and just have a bit of fun. That makes it easier. Just as in professional life too, there are hard days, there are good days, but you just take it in your stride and mix it with a bit of fun, and it makes it easier to cope with it.
Yeah. Great. No, and you mentioned resilience. It's a big word, and I think the pandemic has probably forced us to confront certain things which have required resilience. So I think the human race has had to dig deeper and find reserves of resilience they probably didn't know they had. So I think it's a great phrase, and something I really value greatly. I'd like to believe I have deep reserves of resilience which have helped me through certain phases of life. But let's talk about your life, your very interesting life, built in many chapters. You've been around for a while in certain industries, and you've done so many things. And I want to go back to, you were talking offline, and you were saying that when the global financial crisis hit in 2008-9, that was a very challenging time. It was a very challenging time for me because I came to Australia to do my MBA from the Melbourne Business School. I was dreaming of this big, high packet salary. And everyone came and presented at MBS, all the big ones in their suits. We also went in our suits. And they said, guys, this is us. By the way, we're not hiring. What? Why did you bother coming? Anyway, so I want to hear from you what you went through and how this, I'm sure resilience played a big role there, but talk to us about that journey and some learnings for you from that phase.
Yeah, sure. By the way, my son is just about to graduate from MBS, so he'll be
great
thrilled
school.
to know that.
Great school. Yeah. I love it.
Yes. Yeah. So what happened was in 2007 to 2009 was quite a challenging period for most companies across the world, as you know.
Sure.
The financial crisis hit many companies. At that time, I was working for a very large systems integration company, which had more than 50,000 people worldwide. And I was a senior executive in that company in Australia and New Zealand. But I was managing only one large client, which happened to be the largest client for that organization at that time.
Right.
So when there was a big problem with the head office, where the founders and senior executives were involved in a financial scam. And so it was a $1 billion.
As it was scam. It was well known, or was internally known? Not.
It was only $1 billion. It was only $1 billion. So
only $1 billion. But it came out. It came out in the.
It did. It came out, and the company was listed on NASDAQ, and so I had a call from a colleague at about 3 o'clock in the morning in Australia time. He called from the US and said, "Are you aware of what's happening?" And I said, "You woke me up 3 o'clock in the morning. What do I know?" And he says, "Turn on the television." So, and he said, "Turn on television, switch to CNN or Bloomberg or whatever you have."
Yeah.
And so it was flashing the company logo, and everything was flashing, saying that they've uncovered a huge scam. And so you wake up in the morning. The previous day, you have no idea of anything. And
overnight,
in the middle of the night, overnight, you have this huge question mark that the company that you've been working for and associated with, and even know these senior, the founders and the CEOs, know them,
Yeah.
They had traveled to Australia.
Yeah.
And to discover this had happened,
Yeah.
and then rushing off and then getting to office, and it's a huge, like the whole world's turned upside down. And then what happened was, in the immediate aftermath of that financial disaster, the people who were running the show in Australia and New Zealand, they quietly quit the company. So they just went away and looked after themselves. And I don't blame them, but that's what they did. So the company here in Australia and New Zealand was left rudderless, leaderless. And so we were getting updates. The government of India had stepped in, because this was a question of the brand image for the company. And
wow.
Then a few key senior people came down here. And so, to cut a long story short, then I became the CEO in Australia and New Zealand for that company.
Sure.
So the situation that we were faced with was, and by the way, many customers here started leaving us, exiting us.
Yeah, of course.
Exiting the company because of the issue. And there was about 1,000 employees in Australia and New Zealand working for the company at that time.
Right.
They didn't know where the next paycheck would come from. Many of them had come from India with their families, and they don't have enough savings to get them through. And the uncertainty with the customer, some customers stayed, some customers quit. And then there were other issues to do with the government and the media and everybody else. So
can I just pause for a second there? Because
please. Yes.
So what's happened here is, if I understand this, everyone wants to be CEO, right? I mean, it's a great aspiration going, I want to be CEO. So here you are, you've been made captain of the ship, but the ship is burning and sinking at the same time. So wow, what a weird situation to be in. So
that's correct. So
yeah, okay, interesting.
The situation itself is weird because, one, you're not the leader, the previous evening.
Yeah.
And then
true.
You've never dreamt for it, aspired for it. You put up your hand, and it just lands on you. That for whatever reason, whether
so you went from being whatever you were to CEO in a day.
That's in a day.
Oh, wow.
Right. So you can't be prepared for this, right?
No.
So the point here is that sometimes you want certain things in life, but life has other plans for you. And and this happens quite a bit when.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So what we want is very different to what happens. And so I got thrown into extreme pressure. I wouldn't wish this on anybody.
Sure.
At the same time, the other side of the coin was, it also gave me tremendous opportunity to test what I was made of, what I was capable of, whether I could stand and rescue, the company here, whether I could persuade the customers to stay with us, whether I could persuade the employees to stay and deliver services as they were doing before. And I had never done press interviews, not been on television, not been on newspapers, never had occasion to sit with the Premier of Victoria and discuss the way forward. So I had to do all of that because the government of Victoria was involved in a partnership with this company.
My goodness.
Then I had to face lawyers, wanting to undo contracts and, all of this stuff. So I had to basically learn PR, handling media, handling legal contracts, then discuss options and solutions with, people as senior as the Premier of Victoria. So I had to learn all of this, and so that's the kind of resilience that, the earlier analogy to sports that taught me,
Yeah. Very interesting. So this is almost like, if I were to go back to the marathon example, it's like someone who is running in a school race. I mean, maybe not as dramatic, and then suddenly has to compete with the Ethiopian runner in the Olympics. And so it's
sort of.
Bit of a shock, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Oh wow, that is a fantastic story, and you had me. You're a good storyteller, Venki. I don't know if someone's told you that before.
Thank you.
But
Thank you.
Now I've had two examples of that from you. So that's fantastic. So and then when did that chapter finish up? So you were CEO. How long were you CEO?
Yeah, for about 4 or 5 years after that. So right. I was CEO. I was the leader for Australia and New Zealand markets for 4 or 5 years until 2013. And then I decided that corporate career was enough for me.
Yeah, okay.
And then I branched out to offer consulting services on my own, and that's what I'm doing for the last 10 years. Thoroughly enjoying it.
Fantastic. Well, what an interesting story there. Okay. I want to talk about other chapters of your life. Now, you're obviously of Indian origin, like myself, and there's certain pride associated with that, as there should be. Now, India did something incredible earlier this year, and they sent unmanned spacecraft to the moon and to the southern pole of the moon, if I remember correctly, the only country to do so. And that was a moment of immense pride for many of us. But you had a personal connection. I believe 40 years ago, your career started with ISRO or with the PSLV engine. Is that correct? And tell us about that part of your life.
I'm impressed. I hadn't told you this, and you've done your research, and I don't know where you picked this up, but I'm very impressed. Yes, indeed. So when I graduated way back in 1984, I worked as a aircraft designer in an aerospace company.
Yep.
So they were subcontracted to build the PSLV structures for ISRO.
Yes.
And it's the same launch vehicle, the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, that's used. Obviously, it's undergone many improvements, and it's the same one that was used to launch the Chandrayaan spacecraft.
Sure.
So when that happened, I found a personal connection that it so warmed my heart, saying, yes, it's many years ago, but the small contribution is, I felt so good about it.
Yeah. Did you in that phase of your life, did you come across any of the people who shaped some great things for the nation? Did you know of a certain Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam at that time, or did you know any of the other sort of famous people at that phase?
Yes, I've come across absolute stalwarts who contributed to India's space program, but it wasn't necessarily in that professional capacity. My father worked for the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore.
Yes, of course.
And through him, I had the privilege and the good fortune to have met people like Professor Satish Dhawan.
Of course.
So they're absolute, they're brilliant. They're fathers of the Indian space program. I wish I could have come across Abdul Kalam, but no. But quite a few of those really top class scientists, I've had the privilege of meeting them.
Yes. Okay. Wow. So from rocket science, to being CEO, to doing consulting. It's very interesting. So have you, just out of curiosity again, have you watched Rocketry, the story of
yes, absolutely,
Nambi Narayan?
Nambi Narayan, yes.
What do you think of the film? I mean, I probably won't ask you to comment on the controversy and stuff, but what do you think of the film?
Wonderful film, and I did not know the background and the story until I saw the film. It was very moving and very impressive in how committed and how driven they were in
Yeah.
developing the propulsion systems that are used in these rockets. Amazing.
Fantastic. No, great movie. Even I mean, I had no clue. And I think that was one of the points of the movie to educate and to let people know. Fantastic. Okay. And I also see that you like to highlight the efforts of people who have contributed to the nation building of India, but are not necessarily well known. They're not covered in major media, but you've taken it upon yourself to highlight their successes. Why? Why did you do that? What is the rationale?
So I was a bit frustrated.
Right. Okay.
With when I have nothing against Rishi Sunak, by the way.
Right. Okay. Right.
Okay. I have nothing against Vice President Kamala Harris. I have nothing against them.
Sure.
But it seemed like in social media, particularly Indian social media, there was so much popularity of Rishi Sunak and Kamala Harris and all these people. They may be of Indian origin. They become famous, but they have nothing to do with India. I don't think they do much for India.
Sure.
And so I started a campaign saying it's really good that these people, we associate them with India.
Sure.
But there are so many people in India who have done extraordinary things for India and Indians and the Indian society. They've done significant work in social development that we don't know about.
Sure.
And we should promote them.
Yeah.
So I took upon myself to come up with a story about somebody who was less known but had done tremendous work and showcased them every week. So I did that for a long time.
Yeah.
And so people appreciated that, and
very interesting.
I had responses from some of those people themselves.
Wow.
And they wrote to me thanking me, and I felt really good that I'd done my small bit for them.
No, you did. You did more than your small bit for everyone, not just for them, but by highlighting their stories, you're benefiting so many other people that you probably will never meet. But good on you to do that. I just found all of those gestures very impressive on your part. Now, when did you move to Australia?
1991.
1991. So so you came to Australia, you were born in India, I'm guessing, and you moved to Australia. I was born in India. I moved to New Zealand first, and then to Australia. So, but down under, I've spent more time now than I did in India, and I'm guessing it's the same for you.
Likewise, yes, I've spent more time in Australia.
And we've lived this wonderful Australian dream, Australian life. Australia has given all of us a lot. So I want to know from your perspective, what can India and Indians learn from Australia, and what can Australia and Australians learn from India?
There's a lot that we can learn from each other, absolutely. And as part of my Indian background, and then my life in Australia, and having a straddling my feet in both cultures, hopefully I'm qualified to answer that question. So what India can learn from Australia is, at least in the area of business, I'm speaking professionally now.
Please.
Is consistency, and so you saw this even in the recent World Cup in cricket.
I was going to go right there, and you consistency. I went straight number 6.
So the Australians do that really well, whether it's in work, in life, in sport, and they're consistent. There's no flashes of brilliance or ups and downs. There are, but they remain consistent in their outcomes. Very true. So that's something we can learn. Then what Australia and Australians can learn from a country like India is adaptability. the capacity of Indians to adapt to situations, without getting worked up, given given the hassles of everything else, is remarkable. So I see that in business life here, where something goes wrong, we as Australians jump up and down immediately, right? And we go into panic mode. So it's the balance between what's norm and exception. So in India, everything is a norm, and if you flip it around, in Australia there would be exceptions.
Correct.
So
I think in India the exception has become the norm. So
that's right. Like a train being late, or a phone not working, or something else. It's quite normal. But so the situation is what it is. How we react to that situation, I think Indians do it a lot better. And that's something we can learn. There's just simple differences that come to mind. And
fascinating, because I've enjoyed learning and growing up in India for the first 20 years of my life, and then now spending 23 here. And I've just enjoyed who I am right now, because I'm a product of both of these countries, and on New Zealand as well. And it's really shaped my thinking and my outlook towards a lot of things. And I've enjoyed that balance, I must say. And hopefully, even though my daughter is born here, she's already connected to a lot of Indian culture, whilst imbibing the best of what Australia has to offer. So I'm really excited and looking forward to how that contributes to her as she grows up. Okay, and you also, I read something where you'd written a line, and I found that very interesting, because, and I'll tell you why. I'll set this up. I'll give you a bit of context. So I'm a speaker by profession. I'm a coach. I talk about peak performance, and occasionally that also crosses over into leadership. And obviously leaders want to get the best out of their team members, to get them to perform at their peak. They themselves need to perform at their peak. So leadership is a natural sort of fit with what I talk about. And one of the frameworks, and when you go to MBS, all of life becomes a framework. And there's quadrants. You see quadrants everywhere. And one of the leadership frameworks was, how concerned are you for people, and how concerned are you for tasks or for results? And there are numerous examples. There are 5 leadership styles, as they say, that arise out of this. And there are many leaders who are so task and result oriented, which is, I think, the typical norm today, to be very honest, that they're not people oriented. People become numbers. And then there are those who are so people oriented that they don't get the job done. And so in theory, yes, it's all great. You aim for the balance, aim for the middle, aim for best of both worlds. And I think from an Indian epic perspective, I think Lord Rama got it really right. So when the project was to build bridges, it was an incredibly difficult task. Against great deadline pressure. And that's real deadline pressure. You don't know what's happening in Lanka. And so they have to build bridges, and everyone contributes, and he gives importance to the little guy, to the squirrel. So there's care for people, there's care for tasks that needs to be done. So that's one example that I can come up with many years ago. But you say that you have an interest, and you've understood and experienced how to find that balance between people and tasks, people and results. How do you do it?
So obviously, as you pointed out, on that spectrum of task versus people orientation, we need to be we need to have balance. So either as ends or extremes will not work, as we know, right? So what I thought and what I found and I experienced, and it has worked for me, is people are really important, and most people are committed. The trick is to make them see the tasks as their tasks, not somebody else's.
All right, take ownership.
That's right. So it's the job of the leader to inspire people to thinking that they're doing the task for themselves, not for somebody else.
Very interesting.
Unless they see that, then tasks will not get done. You have really great people, but if they don't see that task as their baby, then it won't be done well. So that's that. ownership, that getting people to own their tasks as if it was their own, and they're doing it for themselves, I think helps in getting that balance.
Very interesting. That's a great tip, because a lot of people, including when I talk about leadership, I think it has its role. Is I like to connect what everyone does to the big picture, so everyone converges towards the big picture. So when everyone was doing their bit to fight for India's freedom became the big dream, the common dream that they all share, a common vision. But then individually they can see it as their task to get there, and that's a great point. I think
yes, and the more they see, how it contributes to the bigger goal, and the more they relate that their work to the bigger goal, the better it is for them. It adds meaning to the task.
100%. And I give this example a lot in my talks, is about, I look towards history. I think history is a great teacher for what lies ahead. And, when we look at certain historic achievements, whether we were born or not, I think we should be proud of that, because it's the achievement of the human race, and we're proud of the human race. The moon landing, for example, in 1969, 400,000 people worked on it, and people don't realize that. And each of them, maybe took ownership of their task. They saw it as their little baby, making sure the lunar module worked. whatever they did, because to put one man on the moon, 400,000 people had to work.
Absolutely.
So very, very fascinating, very interesting. Okay. All right. I mean, we could go on. I want to know, you mentioned cricket. any key takeaways for people from this game, from any perspective, and key takeaways that they can take into their professional and personal lives, according to you?
From the World Cup that we just
from
saw.
From the World Cup final.
Yeah. So, as disappointing as it was for Indians and Indian supporters to lose the final, I think we need to take it in perspective. There will be these bad days, and India did really well up until that time. And it just, they faltered at the finish line. That's okay. It happens, and one can say, well, it's happened too often. It's happened since a long time. It is a process towards that success. Each step is it's not a failure. It's a necessary step towards that success. It will come. I think we should not lose faith. I don't think we should ever try to pick faults with players. It just happened, and we need to keep faith. And as they say, the saying goes that it's every bad phase passes. It's always darkest before dawn. So maybe the dawn is coming in the next World Cup. So we need to stay the course. We need to remain hopeful and optimistic.
Well, luckily there's another World Cup. Every year there's a World Cup.
There is, and there's this small story I would like to tell you about. It was this insurance agent that used to sell life insurance policies. So he went around asking people, will you buy a life insurance policy from me? And people said no. Every time people said no, thank you, he said, oh, thank you very much, thank you very much. People said, what's going on? I didn't buy. And so one guy said, hey, hang on, I didn't buy from you. Why are you happy, and why are you so energetic in your thanking me? He says, no, somebody, I figured out that for every 9 people that say no, the 10th says yes, and you're the 9th.
Oh, very cool, very cool.
So the next World Cup might be India's.
Very cool. Yes, the hope lives on. Good. Okay, all right. As I said, I mean, we can have a conversation, in which we will. I hope to catch up in person and have a much longer conversation that is not recorded for a podcast. But in terms of the podcast, it kind of brings us to the last question that I always ask all our guests, and I'm very interested in knowing your answer. So you've talked about, and by all means, you can go back to a theme you've talked about resilience through the marathon. You've talked about when you want to achieve something that is longer term, you need a herd, you need a group, okay, rather than just speed, which will burn out. And you talked about so many wonderful themes, learnings from leadership, from cricket. But for someone to become the next big thing, which is what this podcast is about achieving and making something dramatic, something tremendous happen, rather than just being stuck in mediocrity. What does a person need, must have, non-negotiable, to be the next big thing, according to you, Venki?
So yes, the next big thing could be anything. It's all relative. So for some, it could be a very big organization. It could be a big innovation. It could be anything. A breakthrough. So I think what's non-negotiable really is character building, right? So without which it doesn't matter what else we have, what other types of resources we have. I think that's absolutely non-negotiable. As somebody once said, right, personality is what people see in good times of us. Character is something that is seen of us in not so good times, right? So that is non-negotiable. Of things like, again, you can break down character into fundamental things like integrity, etc. But what I mean by character, that character, building a character is fundamental, and everything else will come. Every other resource will come.
Yeah, no, that's so interesting.
Yeah, that's non-negotiable.
That is so interesting, because it takes me back to the start. No, well, almost to the start. The marathon was the start, but to almost the start, where you talked about this, very difficult time in your professional and personal, I'm sure, life, when overnight, when your life changed. And I think that is testament to your character. And whoever thought you were the man for the job, I think they knew you. They knew your character, and I think they knew you had the character to be able to perform under severe adversity. So I think that makes complete sense.
Thank you. I hope so.
Great. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing about your life. I'm sure we're all better off. There are lots of interesting things that I want to contemplate on. I think when you learn something, when you capture some information, I think it's important for one to reflect on it and let that cement. So I will do that. So thank you very much for sharing your valuable time with us, valuable insights and lessons from your life. So once again, the show is better off for having you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shriram, for the opportunity, and I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Venki. Please stay offline. We'll have a chat. Thank you.
Yeah.